Welcome to WeConnect. Senator Chris Evans is a minister in the Australian federal government. He looks after tertiary education, skills and jobs. He's here in our country on a short visit, and we were able to get him onto our show on this his last sector while he's here in India. Thank you so much, Senator Evans, for joining us. Let me ask first, overall, are you satisfied and entirely pleased with your visit to this country?
Look, we've had a really good visit. I met with Minister Kapil Sibal and we had the inaugural meeting of the Australia-India Education Council. So it's a framework for developing education relations between the two countries, and it's a priority as part of the strategic partnership between Australia and India, and it was a very productive session.
Right. You yourself, of course, are responsible for tertiary education in your own country. So what do you think about the Indian students who actually come there? Have you seen the numbers going up or going down over the recent past?
Look, we had a bit of a dip a couple of years ago, but the tertiary education sector is starting to grow again. Indian students have a good experience in Australia, and you've got the need to send students abroad because you've got a lot of highly talented students.
Right.
But increasingly we're seeing partnerships between Indian universities and Australian universities, so not just about students studying abroad, but maybe doing joint degrees, getting credit for study in either country. So a really deepening relationship is starting to occur.
Right. So do you then see that we'll have Australian students actually coming into India to do parts of their programs?
Look, I think we'll see more of that. We're trying to make sure that they get credit for the time they spend in India, and there's been some barriers to that. So the universities have resolved now to work very hard so that any time they study in India, the Australian students get credit and vice versa. So I think we'll see more short-term semester or maybe only for a year as part of a degree in another country. So I think we're getting more flexible, and therefore we'll have more different sort of arrangements.
Let me draw you out on the fact that we did have a lot of Indian students who were going across to Australia to do vocational courses, and I think this has been an issue that has cropped up as not being necessarily very acceptable to your country and your government. What do you think?
Well, I think we had people who were caught in what was really more of a migration program than a student program, and a lot of them were getting exploited, having to borrow large amounts of money to come to Australia. Many of them weren't actually genuine students, so we've tightened up the visa regulations. We very much encourage genuine Indian students. The focus is on tertiary education, and what we're seeing now is a recognition that vocational education is probably best done in India, and so we're seeing partnerships develop between Indian training providers and Australian training providers to train to Australian vocational education standards in India. It's obviously a lot cheaper, a lot easier for the student, and the numbers you're going to need to train in the next few years are massive.
That's true.
And that's going to have to occur in India.
Right. But I also know that you're tightening up on the institutions in Australia that were actually offering these kind of vocational courses. So was there any real issue about that?
Oh, look, there was a section of the market that opened up, some private providers who weren't providing a quality education, and we've come down very hard on that. We put legislation through the federal parliament to ensure standards. We've got a national regulator. A lot of work's been done to make sure that that small segment of the education providers who were a problem have been stamped out. People can be reassured that there are quality providers in Australia. We have a number of universities in the top 100 in the world. All of the universities in Australia are backed by laws in the states. They're established by statute. They're publicly supported. So the university sector is very stable and very strong.
Right. Now you have 39 universities in your country. In terms of an Indian student actually coming there, do you think that they should be very careful about where they come to and just limit themselves to these 39 universities that are actually monitored by your government?
Well, look, all the institutions are monitored, but there's no doubt that the 39 universities have, as I say, a statutory basis. Many of them have been established for a long time now, and so they have international reputations, a breadth of courses, and are very stable, publicly backed, publicly funded universities. There are private colleges also available, and many of them are of good quality, but people obviously need to make sure they do their due diligence on who they enroll with. But we've actually seen a lot of colleges close as we've made the regulations tighter.
Right. Now, in your own experience, Which is the one area you find that most Indian students want to come and pursue studies in? Is there any specific area?
Look, we get a wide variety from Indian students, partly because there's strong partnerships developing between universities. We have a lot of Indian PhD students, and we want more because they're very high quality, right. And we need to build our research capacity. We have so a whole range, a lot of science, a lot of medicine, but a whole range of subjects that Indian students study in Australia. They generally tend to follow their interest level to the sort of university that specialises in that subject.
Right. Once again, let me ask you, if you see an increased interest in Australian students coming to India to do research?
Yes, look, we do, and we're very encouraging as a government of more students studying in India. I think not only do you get the benefits of the education, the research, but you get the people-to-people links, you get the understanding of each other's culture, and those links often follow people through life. It also is good for trade and business because people move into other careers. So we're very much encouraging of that, and I think the universities working in partnerships now will see joint degrees, joint PhD programs. Many are established, but my delegation on this trip has done a lot to further those ties.
Right. You talked earlier about numbers having actually come down of students. Can this be attributed to the fact that we have had some kind of issues with Indian students in Australia, and there were skirmishes and things like this now? Do you think that this is the reason why the numbers came down?
Look, I'm sure it contributed to some concerns. We think the vast majority of Indian students in Australia have had a great experience. We had an alumni event during my visit, yes, where the students there talked about their fantastic experiences. Many of them are now very successful in science and medicine, yes, and Bollywood. They've gone on to careers all around India, and they speak highly of their experiences. But the publicity certainly, I think, hurt us. And there have been things like the increasing value of the Australian dollar. All of those things make it more difficult. But I think people need to understand the visa changes were designed to stop the exploitation of migration scams. We've essentially stamped out that activity, but the actual tertiary education sector remains strong. There's still more than 50,000 Indian students in Australia. They're having a great experience, and they'll come out with very good degrees.
Now, Senator Evans, you are also responsible for skills and job relations, and this is another area, which you take care of. What about the skills that Indians can actually offer to Australia? Do you find that that's a good thing?
Well, I used to be our immigration minister.
I know that.
And
yes, that's a tough one.
Yes, but we have a lot of Indian migrants to Australia, and we have demand for Indian skills. We have a lot of Indian doctors, and we continue to recruit Indian doctors because they are of very high quality. So we employ them in the public and private hospital systems. Indian IT experts are in very large numbers in Australia, and a number of Indian IT companies are leading companies in Australia. So there are specific skills that are widely used. We're also increasingly bringing in automotive engineers, etc. So Australia's view about migration is we try and get the skills that we haven't got locally to supplement our local skills. So, as I say, specialist areas have been very strong in a number of streams from India.
Right. May I ask you to just hold on a moment, because we'll take a very short break and we'll get right back with you here on Reconnect, so you don't go anywhere.